Hello. I figured I'd put together a little tutorial because I made a fun thing in Figma and wanted to show how I made it work with Smart Animate. What I've created is a really simple and kind of mocked version of Pac-Man. It can be thrown together in just a few minutes, and I wanted to walk you through how I made it. So we've got this kind of fake Pac-Man where you've got a press start screen, we click on it, Pac-Man comes across the screen, in up dots, a ghost comes down, they hit, they die, and you get a game over. So I'm going to show you how I prototype this in a really simple way in Figma, which obviously isn't a working game, but I think is a really fun way of getting the idea across if you wanted to have a prototype level. So what I'm going to do is walk through how I set up these screens, and we're going to start by making this title screen here. So I'm going to start from a blank screen, and I'm just going to create a basic frame. I've got my color styles all set up ready to go, but you can use really whatever colors you want. Same with text styles too. I'm just using a simple pixel font from Google Fonts called Press Start, and I've got a basic title set up ready to go. So if I type in Pac-Man, put that into the middle, and then I want a Press Start one as well. So I apply my subtitle to that. Cool. Colorless yellow. Okay, so I've started designing my title screen, but you can see that it's pretty static compared to that first one where we have the press start flashing. So what I actually want to do is create a animation tied to a component variable, which is something that you'll see I'll do a lot as we go along. So what I'm going to do is actually drag over this press start. So in order to drag over a copy, I'm just holding the Option key, or you can just copy and paste it across. I'm going to now just change the width of this just so it matches the object. Right click and click Create Component. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create two states. So I'm going to create a new variant by clicking the little plus at the top right corner, and I'm just going to call this frame. And we're going to have frame 1 where it's here, and then frame 2 where it disappears. So essentially that second variant, I'm just going to click on that and turn the opacity down to 0. So now we have two duplicates of the same piece of text, one that's visible and one that's not. And essentially what we want to do is now at this component level, add in an animation on this variant. So if I click on this first title and I drag it to the second variant here, I can now define an animation which in any case of that object, it's going to play. So if I go to after delay, I'm going to set an automatic animation. So I don't want to have to click, I don't want to have to drag, I just want the text to constantly flash in and out, and that's how to achieve this. So after 400 milliseconds here, it's going to instantly change. I don't want to fade out. I want to kind of capture that old school pixeless effect. So likewise on the second one, I want it to come back to the first, and it's going to be the same animation. So after 400, it's going to instantly jump back. Now if I grab a copy of this variation, either from going from the assets up here, or just copying and pasting and paste that in, now if I run my preview, you can see the text is now doing that effect where it's jumping in and out. So the next step is to create our actual game screen where we have our Pac-Man coming across and in all these dots. So let's create our little Pac-Man. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set up some circles here in Figma, and we're going to actually just create the different frames of the animation. So the way to do that is you draw a circle, and then to actually get the mouth of Pac-Man coming in, you actually want to use this arc feature here. So you can click on this and you can drag it, and it will create a Pac-Man mouth. Now what I'm going to do is just tweak the values here. So I want about a 75-degree open mouth, and I want him to be on his side facing right. So I'm going to set the angle to about 45 degrees or so. I'm just going to rename this to be Pac-Man. And then again, we're going to create a component out of this. So I'm going to create a component here, and we're going to name it frames again. And the reason we're doing this is because there's going to be different animation frames for this Pac-Man coming across, eating the dots. So we've got the first one with his mouth completely open. We add another variant, frame 2. We're going to go in here and we want the mouth to be half closed. And the way to do that is to take the values that we have here and halve them. So 45, you just go divided by 2, 22.5. Now 75 we want to increase because 100 is a complete circle. So what we actually want to do is take that 25 that we're missing, halve that, so you get 12.5, and then you end up with 87.5, and you'll get a half-empty mouth. Lastly, we want to do one which is frame 3, which is a complete circle, so 0 and 100, like that. And now you've essentially got a Pac-Man animation that will come and eat the dot. Now, I experimented a few times with just doing the animation here in the component invariants using Smart Animate, like what you've seen before. But Figma actually had a bit of a limit on it, so we have to do it in a bit of a hacky way. So with Figma, if you've got a component and it's got smart animation on it, so for example, these 4 frames of an animation going through, if you then smart animate that object in another canvas, it's going to completely override that animation. So if I run this doomed to fail prototype, you'll see what I mean. So we've got Pac-Man here with the animation that I want, and he's eating the dots. But if I run the animation of him moving across the screen like so, it's just going to stop that animation, and it's going to take priority the one that's moving across the screen. And then once that animation is finished, it's going to pick back up. Now, obviously, that's not what we want. We want a really nice and smooth animation of Pac-Man coming across the screen without player intervention, eating the dots. So the way to actually do that, and again, it's a little bit hacky, is to actually just take these layers here, export them all as PNGs, and then create a GIF from them. So you can either use an online website like EasyGIF, or I use Photoshop. And then essentially you'll have a GIF which you can then place in and work with. So this is a GIF that I've made before. It's the same animation, it's just been created elsewhere. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that up as a component. So you can drop your GIF in and then put it into a frame here and then create a component from that. So with Pac-Man, we want a couple of different states on him. So we want a state when he's alive, and then we also want a state for when he dies, when he hits a ghost and he kind of flickers off screen. And we're going to mirror that for the ghost as well. There's a couple of different ways of doing this, but I'm going to show you probably the simplest way of going about that. So we're going to have our component here of Pac-Man. We're going to add a state. I'm going to say state here and values alive. And while he's alive, that's when that animation is going to be playing. And then we're going to add one where he's dead. But what we're actually going to do is drag this out a little bit more and create another secondary one here called dead 2 or something of the like. And essentially this is going to be where he goes completely invisible. So I'm going to select this GIF now and go 0%. Just like we did with the text, where we had the text going between 100% and 0% opacity, we want the same here. So I'm going to drag this to that and go after delay, and I'm going to go really short on this one at 100, and likewise back here. And that's because I want a really quick flashing effect, and I'm not going to have it for very often. So now if I drag an instance of the Pac-Man onto the stage, you'll see what's happened now that we've set up these variations. So I'm just going to create a second layer here. I'm going to give it a black background, and I'm going to paste Pac-Man on the screen. So while he's alive, you'll see that the animation runs non-stop. But if I was to turn this to a dead state and refresh it, you can see that now he's flashing. So I'm going to flip him back to alive now, and then just drag him over here. So now I want to create some dots as well. So I'm just going to draw a circle here. You can just use the O key. That's what I used on my keyboard just then. And then just define a size. 10's way too small, so let's go 50. Just create a few here. I'm going to color them white so they're easier to see. And now that I've got them all selected, I'm going to drop them into an auto layout. And that's just going to let me make sure the pattern and the spacing is good. Now that I've got all the layout set up, I'm going to set up a few more dots, so just copying and pasting the layers until you have a nice row of dots here. Okay, now what we want is we want Pac-Man to come across the screen and eat the dots. The problem is that, you know, he's a transparent PNG, so as he goes across the screen, it'll look great for the first one, and then as he comes across, all the dots behind him will come out the other end, which obviously isn't what we want. So what we actually want to do is create a black background that follows him, and what that's going to essentially do is act as a bit of a mask over the top and give the illusion that he's in the dots when he's not actually. It's just that the shape is going over the top here. So as he moves across, this will come over and cover the dots. So I'm going to turn that to black. I'm going to grab Pac-Man and I'm going to bring him to the front, which you can right click and click bring to front up here, or you can just click the closed brackets and bring them up like that. Now what I'm going to do is just center align these, and I'm actually going to create a group from these called Pac-Man so that I can better animate them in the layers to come, which you'll see in a second how to do that. Okay, let's create some environments for him to kind of run around in. So I'm going to create a rectangle here, and I'm going to add a nice blue border to it, black background like that. And we're going to add a little bit of a curved corner to it. Now, at the bottom of the screen, I want it to kind of take up the full size like so, but then up here, I want it to actually curve off to the right. So what I'm going to do is just kind of drag it here, and then I'm going to copy and paste it across, and then I'm going to create a vertical one that goes up like so, and just grab the width of this object here and just make it match. So I've got 239 of the height, so I want the width to be 239, and that'll make sure it matches here. Now the trouble here is you can see these strokes are a little ugly because they're overlapped. So what I'm actually going to do is just grab these objects, turn the stroke off. I'm going to change the fill so you can see what I'm doing. And then I'm going to grab these two. I'm going to go to these three dots up here and click union. And what that will do is take these two shapes and merge them into one. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to put my stroke back on, which I think I did 30. Yep. And then turn this back to black. And now you see we've got a nice pipe shape. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to move that across. I'm going to flip it horizontally like so and bring it across to about here. So now we've got a nice space for Pac-Man to go along in, and what you'll see is if we run this prototype, he'll just stay there, not really doing anything because we haven't told him what to do. And we also haven't spawned in a ghost yet to chase him as he comes down. So that's going to be the last bit we do, is to create the ghost. Now I didn't bother actually creating this ghost in Figma. I was a bit lazy and I just grabbed a PNG from online, and I think it does the same thing. So I'm going to paste in the PNG here. So essentially what we want is we want the ghost to have pretty much the same behaviors as Pac-Man here. So what I'm going to do is rename it ghost, create a component from it, and then same as we did for Pac-Man, I'm going to set it up state here, alive, yep, and then dead, again dragging this out, and then we're going to create dead2. I'm sure there's better names for these classes, but this is a kind of quick and dirty way of doing it. I mentioned before about how there's a couple of different ways of doing this. I've got this other variant which I'm just swapping to, and then it's animating between. But you could also just set up a dead and alive version and then actually assign a variable to it, which you can control via the prototype, which would then allow you to dictate whether or not to play this animation. But that's a little bit more advanced, and I think I'll cover that in a different video. Okay, so now we've got 3 of our 4 components set up that start actually animating how this comes into play. So I'm going to grab a copy of the ghost here, and I'm going to position him around about there. And then I'm actually going to duplicate this frame down. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I want to actually compare where the animation is going to start and where the animation is going to end. So I want the animation to end around about here as Pac-Man kind of eats this last dot. And the ghost comes down and he hits Pac-Man. So now I got to actually decide where it's going to begin. So I'm going to start by actually taking Pac-Man and that rectangle and bringing it way off screen. So I'm going to bring it off screen by about 1,000 pixels or so. Similarly with the ghost here, I'm going to start the ghost. I'm going to grab its Y position and do it at about 1,000 pixels or so. So now you've got the same objects that have been duplicated across, but you've got one off screen here and one down here. And this is really where Smart Animate comes into play, because what we can do is we can tell Figma to look at the layers, look at their names, look at their properties, and make the connection between the two differences and find somewhere in between. So what I'm going to do now is select this first layer here. We're going to drag it down to the second one. We're going to go trigger, we're going to go after delay, and I'm going to do 800 seconds. And then what we want is we want smart animate. In terms of easen, we want it to be linear because we want Pac-Man to kind of glide across the screen eating these dots. But we want it to be a bit of a slower animation. So I'm going to make it 3 seconds. So now if I run this flow in the preview, what should happen is Pac-Man should come across the screen after some time. A little bit of a bug there with Figma, but if I restart it, it should work. And then the ghost will come down and hit him. So now that we've got that animation of him coming across, now we want him to die when he hits the ghost. And that's a lot simpler than you might think it is. So again, we're using Smart Animate here. We're selecting these two with their different states. And we're going to change that state from alive to dead. Now, even though these have different states, Figma is still going to recognize that they're the same object. And what it's actually going to do is it's going to animate their position between the two. And then as soon as that animation's finished, it's going to swap to that new state. So what I mean by that is that Pac-Man will come across the screen alive, the ghost will be alive, then they'll hit each other and they'll die. So we're very close to finishing now. So now we're just going to create a end screen as well. So I'm going to create one last layer here that has a game over. And what we're going to do is essentially set up a game over in the same way that we've done press start. So I'm going to use this title, which is just a 120 point. It's just a bigger version of the same font. Create component here, game over. We're going to have animation frame 1, 2, and then for this one we're just going to put the opacity to 0. Same deal, select the prototype, have it flick across. We want it to be after a delay. 400 I find is good. An instant, bring that back like that. After delay, 400 instant. Grab a copy of that, paste it in, and put it in. So now that's animated all together. So what we want to do is I'm just going to remove that prototype flow that Figma's automatically created because I don't want that. I'm going to click on this and this is going to become the start of my flow. So I'm going to create a new flow here. What I want to happen is for it to be on click, so press and start, it's going to move across here. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go for a dissolve animation here of about 300. And that's going to have that title screen fade away and then it's going to go to the second screen. We don't need to change the second animation here because I still want it to automatically start after some time. But then what I do want is after a few of those flashes for it to bring up this end screen here. So what I'm going to do now is for that final animation, I'm going to go after delay. I'm going to do about 800 again here and have it dissolve out about the same. So now if we run this animation and we go preview here, we've got the press start, we click on it, Pac-Man will come in, he'll hit the ghost, he'll flash, and then after some time, you'll hit the game over. And then that will flash repeatedly until you restart the game. So that's how you create this really simple Pac-Man tutorial. I hope you've learned a thing or two from doing this, and if there's anything you want to see, let me know. But otherwise, thanks for watching.